There's one thing that will forever change the way you sleep, and it's the softest 100% organic cotton bedding from Boll and Branch. You'll fall asleep faster wrapped in the most luxurious comfort. You'll never sleep hot again with airy blankets, cloud-like duvets, and breathable sheets. You'll experience pure comfort on night one and feel your bedding get softer with every wash. Discover the difference with 15% off your first order at bollandbranch.com with code WONDERY15. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Wondery.
Bombas makes the most comfortable socks, underwear, and T-shirts.
Warning, Bombas are so absurdly comfortable you may throw out all your other clothes.
Sorry, do we legally have to say that?
No, this is just how I talk, and I really love my Bombas.
They do feel that good. And they do good, too. One item purchased equals one item donated.
To feel good and do good, go to bombas.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY at checkout.
And I woke up. I was like, okay, I must have been tired. The second time that happened, I was like, whoa, it's the medicine doing it. This one particular night, I had it with that man, like constant, just nagging me, and this is not the right thing to do. But I had chosen to just go to sleep forever that night. And and so I had the bath water running and I had the medicine in my hand, and mind you, I already paid all the bills, everything, took care of everything with the kids, had everything covered, but like that was it. And I heard my phone go off, or what I thought went off. So I went to look at the notifications. I didn't see anything. Then I was like, okay, that's weird. And it still kind of bothered me. So I was searching through and I got on Facebook and I saw his story being shared. And I was like, what? I sat down and I started reading about him, and I ended up turning the water off. I flushed the medicine down the toilet, and I started reading about it. I was like, wait, this man didn't do this. Like, this plain as day, all this. And I was reading so much to where that was at 3:30 in the morning. It was 7:30 in the morning. 4 hours later, I'm still reading his stuff.
That's Lisa Brat Martinez, an advocate for Pablo Velez, a man who appears to be wrongfully convicted. This is the Silver Linings Handbook podcast. I'm Jason Blair. I've covered and read about a lot of claims of wrongful convictions, but I've never seen anything like this. On the evening of July 14, 2004, and into the early morning hours of the next day, a woman named Claudia Beltran, who is at the Perfect Rack Pool Hall and Sports Bar in Houston, Texas, called the father of her unborn child, Adrian Payan. She said that some men who wanted to fight him were at the bar. Soon, Payan was there, and it would soon set in motion a series of events that left 17-year-old Emerson Borrequez, a friend of Payan's, dead. The police quickly honed in on the license plate that Beltran and her friend captured of a gold Cadillac that was noticed at the scene. That Cadillac was registered to Pablo Velez Jr. It seemed like an open and shut case, but it eventually became clear that the police manipulated a photo identification by Beltran to make it appear as if she was referring to Velez, that Velez had given the car to another man in return for taking over the payments, and Velez was likely dozens or more than 100 miles away with a witness at the time of the crime. Even some of the victims' family members, based on their utterance at recent rallies, think Texas got the wrong man. Yet Pablo was convicted of murder and is serving a 30-year sentence in the state. His appeals have gone up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, two courts known for their somewhat rogue interpretations of the U.S. Supreme Court's precedents regarding defendants' rights. Indeed, Jordan Steker, a law professor at the University of Texas, says the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, quote, has a remarkable history of treating the Supreme Court opinions as optional guideposts rather than commands of a higher tribunal. When attorneys from the $5 billion a year global law firm Latham & Watkins, the second largest in the United States by revenue, heard about Pablo's case, they conducted a full-throttled investigation and appeal on his behalf, but to no avail. Now Pablo's last and best chance is commutation of a sentence. In Texas, pardons and commutations, essentially reducing a sentence to a lesser time period, are handled by the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles. I'm joined today by Lisa Brat Martinez, an actor and fashion designer who read about Pablo's case in July of 2020 after finding his story online. Lisa's advocated for animals, fought against human trafficking, fought for the right of children in abusive situations, and now has taken on Pablo's case, which she says is her toughest battle yet. So, Lisa, I just wanted to thank you for joining me. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate the really well-written article that you wrote on the True Crime Times Substack. I appreciate your advocacy. It was really interesting for me to listen to, and I listened to it on the Prosecutor's Podcast, Pablo's case, because it really... I normally don't really throw out my opinions when doing interviews on cases, but I don't think I've ever seen a case that I've read about or that I've covered where it seems so obvious that the person was wrongfully convicted. And in some ways, you would think that would make the entire process easier, but I imagine emotionally, internally, it must be even more painful when it's so plainly obvious and you're not able to make forward progress. So I just wanted to start off by saying thank you. We need advocates in the world who will fight battles that, appear may go on forever. I just appreciate the strength and the energy that it takes, because I know, we see you here on an interview, they're the emails, they're the researching, there's all the other stuff in the background that we're not seeing that weighs heavily. So thanks again.
Thank you very much for having me, for this opportunity, because anytime there's someone, willing to hear what's going on, we're so thankful. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to start off just asking a little bit about you. I'm curious about you as a person. And I was just thinking that, you work in fashion, you worked in acting. I don't know what your life was like really before that, but I was curious about that. And I was wondering whether you had ever thought you'd be in the position you're right now in, and advocating for someone in a wrongful conviction case. Was that in the cards when you were in elementary school or not?
I never thought I'd be in this position either. When I was younger, first off, I was raised on a farm in a little town here in Texas, but I was always, this is gonna sound crazy, I was always defending the animals from fighting one another. And then in school, people bullying and fighting, I'm not into that. I'm always protecting others. So I just grew up being very protective, and this pretty much just fell into my lap. I've been assisting, with human trafficking and helping survivors, and always fighting for what I feel is right. It doesn't matter how we were brought up or where we live or how much money we make. We all need to do the right thing for the sake of everybody. so we can
Right.
learn from each other instead of
Yeah. Well, what you said about protecting the animals from defending or defending the animals from each other doesn't sound crazy to me at all.
good.
But well, hold on. Before we say good, I might be the one who's off. You'll laugh at this. I have a group of friends who are in a group chat, and I don't pay attention to it much. And one day I look in and it says Jason's spirit animal. And you click on it, and it's a video of two cats about to attack each other. And then another cat just like walking in between them and standing in between them and turning around in between them until they stop fighting. So I have that same mentality. And I actually think being willing to have the strength to get people to stop fighting and start talking really can add value in the world, and even in situations like Pablo's that I look at other cases like this where everybody's at each other's throat, even though they may have similar interests. So I think that quality might be serving you well in this situation. Where did you grow up? You said a small town.
It's Palacios, Texas. It's like an hour and a half from Houston, and it's right by the water. Like
Hmm.
it's a little town, but yeah, everybody knew each other, and they knew Lisa out there running around with the animals. But everybody got along. The goat ate with the chickens, and I even had a little possum that would come over at times. But like, I want all my animals to get along with each other, and even now to this day, I've got a rabbit, bird, cats, dogs, and they all hang around together and play together. It's really cool.
Aw, that is kind of cool. The yeah, it takes a certain quality uh to do things like that. I you worked in fashion, you also acted. What got you into, you mentioned a minute ago, advocating for animals and human trafficking. What got you into advocacy work? How did you even sort of open the door to that?
I think it's just my mouth. My mouth has always tended to get me into trouble, and like teachers would tell me, you ask too many questions, you talk too much. And I never liked it when my parents would tell me like, no, you can't do that. Well, why not? Because I said so. Okay, well, what's the reason you're saying no? Because I want to know. But it's just it
Y-
happens. I
You're
question
like, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just I need facts. So
exactly.
why? Right?
And there's just like, even at one point when I was told, no, we can't collect rainwater in Texas, I'm like, well, why not? Like, what's wrong with it? So I'm always questioning things. And it's like, there's some city and state officials, when they see me, they get this look on the face like, oh no, because I can't help it. Yeah.
That's interesting. What was the first cause for you?
Um, it was when kids were being abused.
Mm,
Yeah. And then not only physically abused, but sexually abused. I just started fighting because I
mm,
did experience some stuff, and I learned the hard way. I used to hold things in, and sometimes like my family would be like, "Well, why don't you like so and so?" It's like, I don't want to be around that person. You just feel this like, ugh. And then
hmm
not till literally a couple years ago is when I confessed to my mom, well, so and so did this or that. And she's like, why didn't you ever tell me? Well, because I handled it myself, as a kid. Like I was always fighting, and
mm.
it happens. But
That's kind of interesting because, like, when you said that, just thinking you told your mom recently, the thought that went into my head as you were talking was like, "Wow, no child should have to
mhm.
deal with that alone." And and I'm sorry that happened to you. But then the other thought that followed that was, oh, that's what you're trying to do to try to make sure no child has to deal with that alone.
Yeah, and you can just tell certain little things, and I don't mind opening up. Like I want them to know I'm not just here to help them. Like I know what it feels like. I know what you're going through. But I am so thankful that nothing ever happened completely, if you know what I mean, to me. But even just the touching and stuff, that none of that should have ever happened. And I would physically fight him off. I would fight. And
Well, it's something I think people don't understand, whether it's like someone touching you or more of a sexual assault, but there's a reason why we consider them all an assault, because just like having your house broken into, all these things aren't equivalent, but what they share in common is they instantly make us feel unsafe.
yeah.
Unsafe in the places where, yes, violated, unsafe in the places where we should, namely our home, our schools, our bodies, right?
Mhm.
And I think that, like, if you have been through an experience like yours or mine, which is somewhat similar, um, I think it gives you an ability, I think, not just to, I think to understand, having walked in other people's shoes, but it's easier to have that nuanced kind of empathy for people,
Mhm.
where you understand, I think, and it's not to say you have to go through it to have empathy, but I think you understand why people do things like what you did and not tell anyone, or you understand, like in my particular case, I very quickly reported it, but I spent the next 25 years of my life, like, going to family events with my abuser. I mean, like,
Yeah.
and it seems crazy, right? Like, it seems crazy to an outsider, but it's just what you do to cope, right? Compartmentalize and
Mhm.
other things like that. So that really captured you first. And
Yeah.
yeah, and what kinds of other causes did you get involved in?
Um, Also, I like to clean, environmental cleaning, but the other thing was, I don't like when parents use the excuse like that, "Oh, I drink because I have kids," or "I do drugs to cope with my kids." No, your kids are a blessing no matter how you look at it, they're a
Mhm.
blessing. I don't like drinking and stuff like that. And it's just, yeah, I know my mouth gets me into trouble. A lot of people always say that stuff, but I just like to speak up because there's times that, oh, you know what else irks me? I'm sorry, it's like elderly abuse. Oh, no,
Mhm.
no. Oh, gosh, that's one other thing. Like, I go to nursing homes. Like, a lot of the stuff I do, I just keep a low profile and do it. But I really enjoy going to nursing homes and hearing the elder stories. And it's
Mhm.
so heartbreaking because they have family who doesn't go visit them, and like, why not? And why just, why don't you hold on to your loved ones, property, their clothes, or like their special mementos? People just throw things out to the thrift shops, and it's like, no, I mean, I like thrift shops, but like, don't get rid of their stuff. You have to respect and, like, take care of one another, especially our elders. We can learn from
Right. Yeah, they have so much wisdom. So much wisdom.
and those recipes too. Yeah.
I still have some of my grandmother's, like, folded and
Oh,
in the drawer, right?
it's good.
Well, the, how eventually did you, end up involved in Pablo's case?
Um, okay. I've never, hold on, my eyes are getting watery. I've never publicly said this. The honest to God's truth is, at that time I was in a marriage, and I have 4 beautiful children. They're young adults already, but like, I was in a marriage to where it I was with that person for 33 years, right? But like, I never felt the support or love or anything. And this is probably going to come back to bite me, but at one point, I had taken some medication for pain, and I took a hot bath, and I started to fall asleep, and I woke up. And I was like, okay, I must have been tired. The second time that happened, I was like, whoa, it's the medicine doing it. This one particular night, I had it with that man, like constant, just nagging me and nagging me. And this is not the right thing to do. But I had chosen to just go to sleep forever that night. And
Mhm.
And so I had the bath water running and I had the medicine in my hand. And mind you, I already paid all the bills, everything, took care of everything with the kids, had everything covered. But like, that was it. And I heard my phone go off, or what I thought went off. So I went to look at the notifications. I didn't see anything. Then I was like, okay, that's weird. And it still kind of bothered me. So I was searching through and I got on Facebook and I saw his story being shared. And I was like, what? I sat down and I started reading about him, and I ended up turning the water off. I flushed the medicine down the toilet, and I started reading and reading about it. I was like, wait, this man didn't do this. Like, this plain as day, all this. And I was reading so much to where that was at 3:30 in the morning. It was 7:30 in the morning. 4 hours later, I'm still reading his stuff. And I thought, okay, I know the DA. I can get all this together and go talk with her. So I started reaching out to the person running the page, and I got in touch with the legal team. And then I started working on it. And then it's funny because like I ended up meeting his mom first over the phone. And one day she called me and said, because the legal team kept saying, you need to meet him, you need to write him, let him know. I'm like, no, for what? Like, I'm not doing that. To me, I'm just fighting for him, for him to come home because he's innocent.
Ready to prioritize yourself in the new year? Your skin is a great place to start. Dime Beauty, founded by a master esthetician, is more than just a skincare company. With 4 skin-conscious categories, skincare, beauty, body care, and fragrance, Dime offers simple, spa-worthy products that will help you enter 2025 with confidence. Whether you're revitalizing your regimen with nourishing products or building one from scratch, Dime makes it easy. The Work System, our all-in-one best-selling routine, includes a cleanser of your choice, toners, serums, and moisturizers, taking the guesswork out of skincare for your healthiest, happiest skin yet. Dime's commitment to clean ingredients and sustainable packaging ensures every product is as gentle on your skin as it is on the planet. With thousands of glowing 5-star reviews and a loyal community, the results speak for themselves. Revive your skin and give yourself the routine refresh you deserve by visiting dimebeautyco.com. That's dimebeautyco.com. Your best skin awaits.
This new year, why not let Audible expand your life by listening? Explore over 1 million audiobooks, podcasts, and exclusive Audible originals that'll inspire and motivate you. Tap into your well-being with advice and insight from leading professionals and experts on better health, relationships, career, finance, investing, and more. Maybe you want to kick a bad habit or start a good one. If you're interested in learning how to master your emotions and hearing scientifically backed advice for using your emotions as a tool, may I suggest Shift by psychologist and bestseller author Dr. Ethan Kross? Trust me, listening on Audible can help you reach the goals you set for yourself. Start listening today when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Weight loss. It needs to be fast and sustainable. Noom GLP-1 starts at just $149 and ships to your door in 7 days. Take it from Lauren, who lost 22 pounds on Noom.
If I come off of the GLP-1, it's not going to automatically make my weight yo-yo back.
$149 GLP-1s? Now that's Noom smart. Get started at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. Individual results may vary. Not all customers will medically qualify for prescription medications. Compounded medications are not reviewed by the FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality.
Your brand deserves better than one-size-fits-all branded clothing. Lands' End Outfitters creates apparel your team will want to wear, backed by above-and-beyond expertise. Go to business.landsend.com/pod20 and use code POD20 for 20% off your first product.
So one day when the mom called me and said that, I was like, why? So we hung up, and then he ends up calling me, and I don't know, when I said hello and he was like, hello. And I just felt this like a peace come over me. It's crazy because he explains it the same way. So we started talking about the case and everything. And like 2 weeks after that, he confesses to me that same night that I was going through what I was going through, he was on his knees and begged God to give him a reason to live because he was ready to give up. And it's like, whoa. Well, that's how I came across his story.
Wow. So like in a way, before you even knew him, he kind of saved you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It reminds me of why I cry every time, who is it? It's Disney's Pixar, at the end of the movie In and Out, they have the volcano song where where the volcano is, looking for his love, but she's underneath the sea and growing, and he's singing about, I have a dream, I hope it comes true. You'll be with me and I'll be with you, as she's rising up. And your story just kind of makes me think of that he was searching for a reason to live and you were searching for a reason to live. And somehow the universe threw you together. That's so powerful.
Yeah, yeah. My kids know the story and some close friends, but nobody nobody ever knew. So yeah. I'm not like embarrassed or ashamed. I know I should have never had those thoughts in my head. And
Oh, I don't know. You can't control what thoughts you have in your head.
But I don't want to go. So I talk to people about that too. Like, I know we all, go through things in life, but nothing is worth it. You're here for a reason, so you got to keep on pushing.
Yeah. And I think so many people have thoughts like that, but we have to find a reason to go on, like it's an example for you. You found a reason because you accidentally, you heard what you thought was your phone beeping, but it may not have been beeping. And he was on his knees praying and he found a reason, that you found each other. Like, it's the kind of thing that makes you believe that there's a power greater than us somewhere out there, whatever that power may be. And that sometimes, like, the other thought I have is like, sometimes we do have to be brought to our knees to see a path or to see something, because, like, in a way, I wonder if you had not been that depressed, would you ever even have noticed the story? Or if you noticed it, would you have paid attention to it the way that you did? I mean,
yeah,
I think there's a reason why certain things happen, that as much as I want to understand and make sense of the world, that's beyond my understanding.
I believe that too. We talk about a lot of things. Like, sometimes he'll laugh at me because, like, I'm Hikari Apache, and so, like, I'll send him some books. And he understands because he's like, wait, you and your animals, because at one point, like, I literally would play with wolves, like cuddle and love on them and everything. So I would send him photos and books on things. And he's like, oh, I get it now. I get it. You want to be out just in the wild, living your life like that. And I was like, yeah, I do.
Just like my ancestors. And the Hickory Apache are a tribe, right, in the Southwest. A lot of, I guess the reservation itself is in Arizona, but they're Hickory Apache all over the Southwest, right? Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm a little bit familiar with the culture. I had a attorney on last year who was also Hickory Apache. She was doing work in the Navajo Nation. But yeah, like, I mean, and even going back to the point we were talking about before about people who are older, like, the wisdom in the culture is a pretty powerful thing too. And the spiritual bonds are pretty powerful. When you first came across Pablo's case on that night and you were looking at it on Facebook and reading the sites, what was your reaction to it? What caught your attention?
I was shocked. And I mean, I could see everything and I couldn't understand why others couldn't. Like, why would the appeals get denied? I don't even know how, like, even in court, how did he even get convicted? Cause, but there's so many things that went wrong because, it's like he just got the bad luck out of everything. Cause if his truck wouldn't have messed up, he wouldn't have even been coming back towards Houston, but the truck messed up. And so that's why he had to swap the loads, but he had his partner with him along the way all that time. And so not only that, and then going to court, like the second time, like the attorney he was sick with cancer. He ended up passing away, but he put Pablo on the stand. Pablo wasn't even ready for that because the witnesses were told, the judge said, they can go home. But then last minute, oh, no, you can call your witnesses. He's like, wait, what? They all went home. And so he was stuck. So he threw Pablo on the stand unprepared, but he spoke his truth. And then his attorney ended up passing away, and those files are gone. And I'm just like, oh, Jesus, what else?
Mm, yeah.
One thing after another.
One of the things that I always think about when I hear about innocence cases that sort of like will kind of like get under my skin a little bit is we'll often talk a lot about the person who appears to be wrongfully convicted, but we don't spend a ton of time talking about the victim. And Emerson, in this case, who's a 17-year-old, who just came along, it sounds like, for the ride to come to the perfect rack. Probably they told him to stay in the car, is my understanding. He wasn't supposed to be a part of the fight. Have you found out anything about Emerson's story and his life while working on the case?
Some family and friends of his had reached out, and they said that he was a nice guy, he was a good guy, and that I agree with you. He was like an innocent victim. And that's why I always feel like two men lost their lives that day, Emerson and Pablo, because of his freedom. But that it just seems like Emerson, apparently when he got out of the car, maybe he was running for cover, but that was not a good idea because he innocently was murdered.
Right.
But I haven't heard anybody say anything negative about him, like his family and friends. I get people anonymously to send me like little comments here and there, or they'll send me messages like, don't say anything, but this is what really happened. I'm like, okay, wow. Several of them.
What with it's been really interesting to me around any case that gets any moderate amount of attention. A lot of people do want to insert themselves into the cases, and it kind of baffles me sometimes some of the things that they'll say and the allegations. Or I was just looking at screenshots of a text message of a girl who's actually Blackfeet Nation. Her sister went missing in 2017. Her name's Ashley Loring Heavy Runner, and she was a 20-year-old who went missing. And her sister Kimberly received text messages recently from people, accusing her sister, who was beloved, and I mean like truly beloved, of all sorts of things, blaming her for her disappearance. And it just shocks me what in people's anger and their guilt and other things along those lines they'll do and say.
Uh-huh. And at first some were commenting like, wait, I didn't know that Pablo was innocent. We were told that he really did this, because I'll share everything. I have that Google Drive out there with the facts. So then they're shocked to see like, well, why is he even locked up? And it's like, that's what I want to know too. Like, we all want to know that. How did he even get to that point?
One of the things that I haven't heard about that I'm curious about that you may have some insight on is, and I think this is another innocence case challenge too, is that, when people are advocating for somebody, it's really easy to advocate for all the great things about them, but not necessarily talk about the bad things. And we all make mistakes. But I was just curious what Pablo really was like before any of this happened. Basically all I know about him from before is that he had a job, obviously, because he was driving a truck that night. He had a house he lived in, and he had a girlfriend. And I don't know anything else about him. What do you know about what his life was like growing up?
And that is one of the things, because when I do jump on a case, I dig deep. I want to know, because if my name is attached, I want to know everything. Like, don't try to sugarcoat stuff for me. You know what I mean? So I was digging and digging. I think one of his weaknesses was women, but I know for sure the other one was cars. That's one thing him and I we could talk about cars and motorcycles, but from what I've seen and I've been told, and even from him, but family members and friends as well, that he's a very independent man. And he has so many skills. Like this is one thing I admire about him. Like has welding experience. He was a mechanic also. And then to be a truck driver. And it's like, okay, whatever he wants, he actually like busts his butt and works for it and gets it. And that's good, instead of expecting things to be handed to him. And yes, it was a mistake for him to sell the car to the neighbor without, doing the proper paperwork. But that's another fault he has, is thinking that, okay, I'll trust you, let me get to work on the road because I have to take this load. And that's something that like will forever haunt him, because he had so much faith in people that, that somebody was going to have his back and do the right thing. And instead they did this and messed his whole like life up.
Yeah. But I mean, so it sounds like what you're saying is he was, and probably still is, a trusting person, an industrious person. I sort of feel like, you can call the paperwork, not doing the paperwork on the gold Cadillac, you can call that a mistake. Yeah, it's a mistake. It's not a go to prison for 30 years mistake, but it's a mistake. But at the end of the day, I also wonder in this case, with all the things that were ignored or arguably manipulative, and I'm thinking of things like Claudia Beltran saying to the police officer and looking at the pictures that that the picture of Pablo looked like the guy but lighter, right? And I'm thinking of all the things like not mentioning the confidential informants that told the detectives who the shooters were. That they probably, I wonder, even if he had done that paperwork, the detectives wouldn't have come up with some other way to just sort of get around that.
Yeah. And I think it's like if he was like an easy target or something, because we don't speak about like this really, but Pablo has 4 children. And so even when he was working, he was always separate moms, but always taking care of the kids, buying them stuff. So he was not only taking care of his mom, but his kids as well. And he was literally snatched. That's why I say he was kidnapped by Harris County and sold to Texas, because he was taken away. And through these years, he has still tried to maintain relationships with those children. But they hear other stories like, no, look, he's incarcerated for this, he must have done it. Okay, but the man, this man's not capable of doing this. So it's just little things like this that I had explained to the DA that time that, this has ruined his life. I don't know if you guys were trying to get numbers or something. And like I told her, this was before you were even in office. Like, correct it already. And not only that, yes, they sentenced him to 30, but do you know that they wanted to give him 75 years.
Oh, wow.
And then 50. And then they settled on 30.
A question I have for you, just thinking about what you just said there. It's something I didn't really think about. Pablo was taking care of his mom at the time he was arrested, and he had his 4 kids, and he was involved in their lives. What happened with all of them? What happened with his mom? And what happened with his kids after he was incarcerated?
Well, his 2 are with one mom. That's why I said one of his weaknesses was women. 2 are with one mom, because they're siblings with the one mom. And then another is with their mom. His 3 separate mothers. But yes, so the mothers were still raising them and stuff. So there was contact between them, because they would write him little kid letters and little photos, pictures they drew. And all those, we have them like stored up, in totes and stuff like that. But there was contact, and then it's like it's just as if people just forgot about him. And I'm like, how? Because when I first came on, I'm like, where's your family? Where's your friends? Like, who else is helping? And his mom, she's still here, thank goodness. But one of her fears is that she doesn't know how much longer she'll be here. And unfortunately, I've had to tell him the time that, hey, I'm sorry, but, your grandfather passed away, or, one of your brothers passed away, or your uncle passed away. And I don't like telling him these things. Like, it's hard. And he couldn't even attend his brother's funeral services through video because of the charge that he has.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's just like, and that brother passed away. He grew up to be a truck driver because he wanted to be like his brother, because Pablo would teach him how to drive a truck.
It was his little brother?
Yeah, he
Oh,
had two
man.
younger brothers, and it was one of them that passed away. It was bad.
What happened with his brother?
He was on his way leaving Houston to Dallas, and in Ferris, Texas, his semi truck went off the highway and went
Oh,
underpass.
oh man.
And there was really no way to identify besides the truck and the route.
Right.
So yeah. And he
Wow.
took that hard because he was teaching his brother how to drive. So,
And it makes him, I imagine, sit and wonder, like, would this have even happened if I had been out?
And that night when Pablo came home, both of his brothers saw him because Pablo went to take a shower and then he had a bowl of cereal. And they saw him, but because of their age, they wouldn't allow them to testify. So then I said, okay, well, now that they're older, how about now? They said, no, because it's too late. So it's like one thing after another. And believe me, I dig deep and try to think of so many different scenarios. Well, why not this? Why not that?
Yeah. Had Pablo been involved in any crime before his arrest, or any arrests?
No, that was his, that photo was his driver's license photo, because he didn't have a criminal record. And even the actual video lineup that they never showed anyone, Pablo is 6 feet tall. It's like 238 pounds. And they didn't even have like anybody else who was named in that lineup with Pablo.
Right. And the key suspects were much shorter than that and much lighter than that, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. For you, you know, you had mentioned before, like you said, that it felt like two people lost their lives that day, both Emerson and Pablo. And, you know, while I understand it's in a different way, it's sort of like, if Pablo is innocent, that's an injustice. And another injustice is the fact that the people who are responsible for the murder aren't being punished. There's no way it can be guaranteed that they're incapacitated so they can't harm society. And also it sends a message in the community about deterrence, meaning, you know, you can get away with murder relatively, I mean, in this particular case, relatively easily. You know, I'm curious, do you think that the way it's played out has been a disservice to the community and public safety?
Very much so, because to this day, for us to get phone calls and messages saying, hey, I know that he didn't do this, I was there and da-da-da, but I can't testify. And it's like, wow. But we've had others who come forward and sign affidavits. But not only that, the shell casings from the night of this incident matched another murder 30 days prior to this one, with the
I
same
didn't.
people being named. Yep.
So jumping back, when you said those people write you and say, I know what happened, here's what I know, but I can't testify, is that because they're afraid of the suspects? They're scared of the suspects. And I had never heard that part before. I may have run right by it, but there was another murder associated with the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
They had matching showcases. Yep.
Wow. And it was a murder.
Yes.
Wow. So from a community perspective, it's not just that you get away with one murder, you get away with multiple murders.
Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of people who do not feel safe or comfortable in Houston right now.
Yeah. Well, because I'm sitting here thinking about it myself and imagining myself in the shoes of somebody who may be a witness or knows something about it. I mean, it sends me a message as a potential witness. If you have seemingly convicted the wrong person. I'm not necessarily going to trust that even if I come to you with the evidence, that you're going to convict the right person, right? So that's like a normal fear. But then add on top of it, this is a case where confidential informants came to the police, or at least one came to the police and told them exactly who it was, described them. Pablo at this point hadn't even mentioned to law enforcement the connection that he had loaned the gold Cadillac to one of his friends. So it seemed like this confidential informant had a piece of information that like was very, very unique and very valuable. And knowing that happened on top of it, I'm not sure I would trust law enforcement with my safety as a witness very easily. And I mean, that's not to say with my crazy self, I wouldn't still go ahead and testify, but I wouldn't be like, law enforcement has my back on this one. They're going to get it right.
Right. There's a lot of reasons why, like, I speak out to the community on generally also, like, public safety and what their needs are and stuff for the residents. But a lot of them just lost faith in the city of Houston, like in the justice system and feeling protected and safe. And it's kind of scary because since living in Texas, people just protect themselves on their own, and we don't need to go back to the Wild Wild West the way it used to be. And I do know we need more police officers for sure because they're doing what they can, but, are they all doing the right thing?
Yeah. I remember when I was a reporter in New York and I was covering the NYPD, I remember somebody saying to me on the police side, look, when the justice system doesn't do its job, everybody takes justice in their own hands, whether it's the cops or the civilians, and we always end up in a worst case scenario. And I think it's really interesting to think about it from the perspective of if a community really believes that a man's innocent and that the two or however many people who are responsible for it are walking among them, that it really does undermine justice. I mean, it would undermine it, I think, even not just for Pablo's case, but any case. Like if I were a witness to something else, I'm not even sure. It would sort of shake my faith.
Yes, and Pablo's case is one of 3 that involve the same original detectives. And the other 2 there's like wrongful convictions there as well.
So what happened with those other 2 cases?
They're still going about it, through the legal proceedings. And, sometimes we had thought, let's all get together and do this, because it's the same detectives who, did it. But we've already surpassed what they're going through. So they're still waiting on their appeals. But I just feel like justice isn't, it's not just a word. It's got to be consistency on both sides of the law, not just on one. And there is corruption. And a lot of the bad guys make the good guys look bad, and it's just a whole mess. Everyone needs to just work together for justice.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned that part that I do think, right? It's about being just. It's about what's fair. It's about what's right. Whatever version of that you believe in. But I wonder in this case, and looking at the details of this case, there's some behavior, by the prosecutor who knew that Claudia was going to come into court and say that the suspect that she saw didn't look like Pablo, actually looked like the guy in the other courtroom. And instead of like taking a beat and pausing, which I kind of understand because now the jury's impaneled, so the jury's impaneled and double jeopardy's attached at that point. So if the charges are dismissed, he'd be acquitted. But the charges would be dropped against him. It would be the equivalent of an acquittal. But I think there are other things the prosecutor could have said. Hey, judge, give us a minute to take a look at this.
Yeah.
Give us a second to check this out. But instead, what she did was she just went into her opening statement and said, "Hey, my witness is going to tell you that that the defendant does not look like the suspect. Just remember what she said the first time and pay no attention to what she's saying this time." And I just feel like that's a dangerous way to operate as a prosecutor, because the right thing, like a prosecutor's responsibility isn't to win the case. A prosecutor's responsibility is to justice. And if that means dismissing a charge or looking into a charge more, or begging a judge for more time, your obligation is really to justice. But then to do that and point the person to what Claudia said the first time, which was also not an accurate version of what Claudia said the first time.
Right.
I feel like as much as this may have been, there may be elements of corruption in parts of the story, it really seems like a combination of callousness and incompetence. And by that, I mean, the prosecutors seem to be callous in that moment. The detectives seem to be callous in their investigation. But really, the detectives did not do the job of really investigating, it seems like. And the prosecutor didn't do the job of a prosecutor, which is to have an allegiance to justice instead of winning. And so in weird ways, it feels like Pablo's behind bars as much of anything because of the incompetence that sounds like it went all around.
Yes. And now Eileen Bogar is a criminal defense attorney. Imagine that.
She's the prosecutor, Eileen Bogar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even I had told his mom and Pablo, I was like, man, if I would have known you guys back then, I would have in court. I know I would have probably been thrown out, but I would have been speaking up like, no, wait a minute. That's not what she said. Like, say something. Because, Claudia said she told her. She goes, wait, who's that? That's not him. And then, it's okay. Just go ahead with, yep. And it's like, how can you do that? It's somebody's life you're talking about.
Right.
Like they don't care.
And it's like the only requirement of your job. Your job as a prosecutor is to further justice. That's the job. That is the job. So is there concern in the community? It sounds like there's concern that the real killers are really out there, and that they're probably. Do you think that that people believe that they've continued to commit crimes?
Yes, there are a lot of whispers and stuff that have been said, and like I have told them, I said my thing is like I don't go after them because that's the policeman's job or detective's job to do that. That's law enforcement. My whole thing is just to prove Pablo's innocence. And there's several people who have, even not to just say it, but even as far as the clerk at the truck stop, when he's waiting there with his partner for the wife to come, we have the cell phone records, the work logs, actual witnesses, affidavits who spoke with him that night at those times. And that's still not enough. Like, what else does it take? And not only the Brady violations, like they kept the notebook with the detective notes until after the fact. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, we have this. It was at one of the officers' houses.
And that wasn't until the appeal?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a no-no. You can't take evidence home.
So walk me through what we know happened that night, what we think probably happened that night, and what the prosecution and ultimately what Pablo now says happened.
And see, that's the beautiful thing about the truth is you never forget it. Like lies, people forget lies, but there's Pablo. Okay, so that night when he was out in Weatherford, and I have filmed over there, and that's far from Houston. So,
and Weatherford's north of Texas, right?
Yes.
I mean, north of Houston, sorry.
North. It's out there by Dallas. So
Right.
that is a good 4.5 hours. Mind you, if you're driving a semi truck with a heavy load, that's going to slow you down some too. And we've had on the podcast, in the comments on YouTube, a truck driver commented. He's like, "Hey, truck driver here. Yep, that's correct. I'm surprised he even made it back early like he did that one time, 30 minutes earlier." So it's just impossible what they're stating. But he did come back with his partner. Partner used Pablo's cell phone to call his wife because the next night she was being induced into labor to have their child. And so
that's the guy who was driving the truck with him, or he was training, something like that. Yeah.
Yes, he was a partner. Yes. And I've gotten in touch with them just recently as well. And even they can't believe Pablo is still there. And I saw a picture of the son, and it's like, wow, he was born the next day after all this. But so Pablo comes, and while they're waiting at the truck stop, the gas station, the clerk is in there in the store. Pablo had words with her too. Like, she saw him. And my whole thing is, what about the surveillance cameras? You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be something. So then after that, Pablo drives back home. After the partner gets picked up, he drives home, takes a shower, eats a bowl of cereal, which to this day, Lucky Charms was not a good idea. It's just not Lucky. His little brother's seen it. Yeah, the mom was like, "Is that Junior?" Because you could hear the brakes to the truck. And so he didn't have the trailer with him because he took that back to the yard, but Pablo owned his truck. So that's what he would drive. And sometimes the neighbors would get upset because of the sound, the brakes and stuff of the truck. So he ended up taking that to go see that girl
and that was his girlfriend / ex-girlfriend, depending on.
Right. Yeah. Because his girlfriend at the time, which was like a wife at the time, she was pregnant. And so when he was over there talking to the ex-girlfriend, I don't know. To me, I think it's like maybe she was a disgruntled woman or something. But she stated that herself when the other two detectives followed up with her saying, "Hey, perjury can get you incarcerated." Because she said, well, and because she kept saying her work log, her work records, right? Well, the detectives pulled all that up, and it was proof she was off that day when Pablo says he was at her house. And so my whole thing.
And this is all happening, like he's driving, I imagine, he's driving from Weatherford on the evening of July 14th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the early morning hours is when he gets home. He has his bowl of Lucky Charms.
Mm-hmm.
He heads off to this woman's house. But it's 2 a.m., right? Am I right? When the shooting began?
Like at 2:10.
So how did the shooting even come about? What have you learned about that?
Because Claudia's the one who stood right there in front of one of the shooters, who is 5'4" and Pablo's 6 feet tall. So she had a good view, but that whole incident, that fight is like part 2 to the fight that happened the night before. And so that whole thing, and it doesn't make any sense. Pablo was the pings from the cell phone. He was in Spring, Texas, like 45 coming in, so 45 south, and that was at 12:13. And then he gets home. Because LG, the wife, picked him up at 12:30, and then Pablo arrives home at his house at 1:30 in the morning. And
the wife is the wife of the person who was driving with Pablo?
Yes. Who the cell phone records show that her husband, which was Pablo's partner, used Pablo's phone to call her and saying, "Hey, the truck messed up, but we're over here. Come pick me up." So they were waiting there for her to pick him up. And she saw Pablo because she picked up her husband at the time, which was perfect for her because the next day the dad was going to be there to, when they induced the labor for their child. Otherwise, he would have missed it.
Right.
So, I mean, everything's there.
We're going to stop here now for this episode. This is the first of 2 episodes with Lisa Martinez on the case of Pablo Velez Jr. Join us in a few days for the second episode. In the meantime, if you'd like to join us for more discussions with me and other listeners, we can be found on most social media platforms, including a listener-run Facebook group called the Silver Linings Fireside Chat. If you're interested in true crime, you can check out our new publication, The True Crime Times, on Substack. For deeper conversations with our guests and live conversations with other listeners, and to support the podcast, you can also join us on our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Silver Linings Handbook.
Your brand deserves better than one-size-fits-all branded clothing. Lands' End Outfitters creates apparel your team will want to wear, backed by above-and-beyond expertise. Go to business.landsend.com/pod20 and use code POD20 for 20% off your first product.